Sustainability Lecture Series. This is our first lecture this year, and we have with us tonight Mark Loparco from UMM Dining Service and Chrissy McMullen from Grow Montana. We'll begin tonight with Chrissy's description of some of the activities of Grow Montana and how we can promote local food systems and economic development at the same time. Mark will continue on and tell us about some of the things that U of M Dining Services is specifically doing with regards to that. They are involved in a number of sustainability issues right now over at U of M Dining Services. One of them is the Farm to College program, and he'll talk in detail about that particular program and how that helps economic development in our area. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our speakers tonight, not belabor further about SPC. Chrissy's going to start us off. Thank you, Chrissy.
I'm going to maybe turn this a different direction. Oh, okay. Where I can stand, where I can actually face you a little better. So thanks everybody for coming. Today you're going to hear a tag team presentation about local food systems as sustainable economic development. Just so you know the structure of the presentation, you'll hear from me first for about the 20 minutes, and I'm going to talk about Grow Montana's work at a state level to promote local food systems. Then you'll hear from Mark Loparco, UM Dining Services, about the UM Farm to College program. Mark will spend about 45 minutes explaining how and why he does what he does over at UM. That will leave us with about half an hour for question-answer time. So if you have things you want to talk about, just save it to the end, and we'll get to it then. For my portion of the presentation, I'm going to open with an overview of why food and agriculture is important environmentally and socially, social justice issues. Then I'll delve into why and how Grow Montana is focusing on local food systems as economic development, with specific examples of what kind of work we do. And of course, I'll end with opportunities for you all to get involved. The reason that I find food such a compelling issue to work on is simply that I'm a consumer of food. It's something I do every day, 2, 3, 10 times. And, you know, it's a choice that I get to make each day. What do I want to eat is a choice that has huge environmental and social implications. Much of the nation's food supply is grown with pesticides, artificial fertilizers, and plowing techniques that pollute our nation's soil, air, and water. Industrial agriculture is the #1 polluter of our nation's fresh water. Animal factories produce 1.3 billion tons of manure each year. Most of our nation's food is controlled by just a handful of multinational conglomerates who often do not treat the land, the workers, or the farmers fairly. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that 300,000 farm workers suffer from acute pesticide poisoning each year. So this is a big deal, and it's a big problem. It's not just a problem that we can just eliminate, because we all have to eat. Food's one of those things you just can't boycott, you know? You just can't stop eating in order to solve the problem. So the answer to the problem of our global food system is actually to recreate and develop a better system. A system that's healthy and that works for people, that works for consumers, that works for farmers, and that works for the environment. And the best way that I think this can happen is to recreate local food systems. This means reducing the number of miles between where the food is produced and where the food is consumed. So, you know, when you buy something that's at Albertsons, say you buy cereal at Albertsons, it's a little difficult to figure out how it was produced. You can't even say that you think this was produced in a negative way because you just don't know. A typical food item changes hands 33 times between when it was grown and when it gets to the supermarket and you buy it. Typically travels on average 1,500 miles before you eat it. So it's really difficult to answer the questions that you may have about how this food was produced and what the effects this food has on the environment or on society. So simply cutting the distance between food production and food consumption is a really sensible solution. When I buy food labeled Montana natural beef, I can look at it, I find a number from the manager of the cooperative. He lives up in Ronan. I can call him up and I can ask him questions about how he raised the cows. I can say, did you use antibiotics? If so, why? You know, are there hormones in these cows? Is it, you know, what do you think about this? How did you graze your animals? I can ask him these questions directly, and you know, he might even invite me out to the farm and I can go visit the cows and see what I think about how it was produced. I don't have to just take his word for it even. And so that's a pretty huge benefit of food security, environmental security, and social security. Other benefits to local food systems include more money. Montanans spend $3 billion on food each year. $3 billion. If we just took, we're estimating, a lot of people say that 15% of that is local food. I think that's a pretty big number, actually. I don't think it's that much. But even if we increased that 15% to 30%, then we would add an additional $450 million into Montana's economy each year. Another way to look at it is that is each household in Montana, not even just each person in Montana, if each household in Montana spent just $10 a week on local food, we would add $186 million back into the local economy. That's not numbers to sneeze at. You know, Montana, that could really make a big difference in Montana. Another benefit of local food systems is more jobs. Things have to happen to your food between the time that it's grown and the time that you eat it. We don't eat typically wheat berries or cows. We eat, you know, bread or hamburgers. Things have to happen to that food in between when it's grown and harvested and when you eat it. And those things that happen is called value added, or is food processing. Food processing was our #1 employer in Montana in the 1930s. So it also has potential to really create a whole lot more jobs and really help out Montana's economy. And local jobs and jobs that can stay here and benefit our community. Because local food systems have such potential to circulate money and jobs in Montana, Grow Montana has decided to frame our work in recreating local food systems as economic development, because it is. Local food systems truly will generate more wealth and jobs for our communities. Plus, our governments often focus on economic development policies and receive few objectors. We all seem to think on some level that economic development is good for all, but the truth is that all economic development is not good. We need a real shift in the way that our government at all levels makes policies. The past 50 years, at least, of policies have put us into the situation that we are in right now. Our state focuses on export as a solution to our problems, even when exporting crops continues to be tenuous at best and detrimental at worst to our communities. Excuse me. You can talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Just to give you a quick snapshot of where our economic development and agricultural policies have gotten us so far. We get such low prices on our crops that Montana ranks 48th in the nation in net farm income per acre. We get about $4 per acre. Without federal farm subsidies, we wouldn't even get that. Government subsidies nationwide, $19 billion a year, made up half of Montana's net farm income for 2003. In July 2004, World Trade Organization negotiations, the United States agreed to cut 20% of subsidies by as early as 2006. This is going to make a big difference in Montana's economy. Affected crops will include wheat and corn. That's why a local food item in the market today is actually an exception to the rule, which is unfortunate. Compare that with only 50 years ago when local food was the rule. In 1950, 70% of the food Montanans ate came from Montana. But today it's literally the exception to the rule. It's exciting to find a local food item in the market. So Grow Montana really has our work cut out for us. But don't worry, we have a plan. We have 4 main objectives to accomplish our goals. First, we're going to do a thorough economic study to try and figure out both what the problems are and to understand the potential answer of local food system to the problems. That means that we have hired an economist to go out and research the market potential of local public institutional markets. The reason we chose public institutional markets is that 50% of the food Montanans eat is consumed in an institution. And we're not sure how much of that is public institutions, but we do know that state agencies spend $12 million a year on food. So we do know that it's a big market. We don't really understand the market, all that well, because most state agencies and most large food purchasers order from large distributors, and so it's hard to know exactly where all that food comes from and what all the implications are when they order food. Second, we're going to do a case study of the Farm to College program, which Mark Loparco will tell you all about coming up next. And but we're trying to figure out more about what the economic and environmental and social implications are for the Farm to College program. For instance, we may know how much money we've spent on local food, but we don't really know what that means for the farmers and growers. And we want to get a more thorough understanding about who we're helping out by a program such as Farm to College, and exactly how we're helping them. How big a difference is this making to individual producers that are selling to Thirdly, we're working to identify the specific policies that can help us create the change that we're looking for. And we've got several methods that we're working on for this. We're going to talk to people through distributing our case studies and our economic research. We're also planning to build a coalition of like-minded folks who are working on a wide variety of issues. So health people, environmental people, economic development people. These are all people that we want on our side because we know that local food systems will benefit all of us. We'll also use the people that are in our coalition to help us identify these policies that we need to work on. And finally, we'll be working on the policies, creating policy change at all levels, local, state, and maybe some federal, but we're actually planning to focus on local and state policies. So to give you some example and some specific ideas about what kind of work we're going to do, in this past legislative session, we had just gotten started. Grow Montana started in January of this past year. We worked on we backed two bills. The first bill was authorizing the Montana Department of Livestock to inspect mobile slaughter units. Without the new law, Montana farmers and ranchers who want to sell to other Montana customers must transport animals to state-inspected slaughter facilities, which may be hundreds of miles away for some producers. By slaughtering animals on site with state inspection, farmers and ranchers can sell meat at any Montana retail, restaurant, or direct market, or create value-added products such as organic, natural, or hormone-free. By simply changing the definition of current slaughterhouse regulations to include mobile slaughter units, the new law will open doors for our state's agricultural entrepreneurs. And just to explain a little bit more about what a mobile slaughter unit is, it's a big trailer, basically, that goes to the ranch and slaughters the animals on site. And it has to follow all the same inspection rules as a mortar and brick facility. So it's not trying to avoid any environmental regulations. It will follow all environmental regulations. It's just making it easier for farmers to control their animal from production to selling it. We also backed a bill to help Montana's food producers and processors sell to state agencies, such as the University of Montana. We promoted a bill that would have given a 10% preference to Montana farmers and ranchers when bidding on state agency contracts. Right now, state agencies have to go with the lowest bid typically. And Mark can tell you how he works with that law at the Farm to College program. But our proposed legislation actually died on the House Appropriations Committee on a tie vote, which was really unfortunate. But we did generate a lot of discussion about the need to consume more food that's grown in Montana. We need to be consuming that in Montana and trying to understand what our public agencies can do to make that happen. And we all started to understand that our state agencies do have a lot of power to make that happen. So that's the two bills that we worked on, and we're planning to go back in 2007. And ways that you can help us would be joining our coalition. I have my contact information on this information sheet right here about Grow Montana. And you can contact me. I will give you more information about how to get involved and how you can help us. You can just pass those out maybe. Why don't you just hand them around? And so because we know that it benefits all of us, and so I know some of you may not be, or probably none of you are farmers and ranchers, but a good economy benefits all of us, as the Sustainable Business Council certainly knows. And I'd love to hear your insights and your questions and your comments about how we can best serve Montana. And so now I'm going to pass it on to Mark Loparco. I can give a little bit more introduction to Mark, if that's okay with you. Mark has 34 years of food service experience and has held his current position since 1992. He's involved in a variety of campus greening initiatives, including the Earth Tubs composting system and the Recycling Oversight Committee. Dining Services recently purchased equipment that allows them to compost pre- and post-consumer waste. And Dining Services is working on the conversion of all paper and styrofoam products to biodegradable packaging. Mark's been a strong supporter of sustainable food systems for some time, but lacked the resources to dedicate to such a project. But in April of 2003, some environmental studies graduate students, including myself, volunteered to help start the Farm to College program, which since its inception has spent more than $640,000 on local and regional food products, with the goal of surpassing the $1 million mark by the spring of 2006. So please welcome Mark Loparco. Oh yeah, I think I got yours.
Can we lower the lights in this front section here?
Is everybody comfortable? Could I carry a hand? Is that okay with everybody?
Well, first I'll start by saying thanks for inviting me to come along and tell you. I think that this is an exciting program, and I think that good times are in store for the little guys, and I think that this is one step, but I think that it's an important step. And hopefully I can fill in some of the gaps with what Chrissy shared with you and put in terms of operational context some of what it takes to do this. So let's go ahead and start, and go ahead, Chrissy, and tell you a little bit about what I'm going to talk about, define the program, give you a little bit of history, tell you where we are now. We'll talk about harvesting a sustainable future, transplanting the concept, and then we'll answer whatever questions that you might have. So basically, we'll go to the next slide here and talk about the mission. Okay, the Farm to College program supports agricultural economic development through the purchase of local and regional food. And the other component is we, from the very beginning, wanted this to become a model for institutional local and regional food purchasing. So from the very beginning, okay. From the very beginning, it was important to us, and I think it's important for Montana, to look beyond the state borders and look at the Northwest and the region. And I believe very strongly in that. So this mission statement also serves in our multi-campus environment, because the Missoula campus is one of 4 campuses of the University of Montana. So this works for us. It's real consistent with what's going on with Grow Montana. And so here's what local means, and here's what regional means to us. Local is anything that we get from the state of Montana, and then regional is this area. We were a little hesitant, although we thought about going into Canada, but we were a little hesitant at this point. So, and the reason that I'm in an advocate of a regional approach is because at some point, this is not something that's just happened isolated and unique to Montana. This is happening in terms of farm to college programs all over the country. And I want people in North Dakota to buy Montana products, part of their program, in South Dakota. And so I'm looking at it from the standpoint of not just what we can do to buy Montana products, but how are we going to support each other, which then in turn supports Montana growers and folks. So that's kind of behind that. The next thing we had to do is for my staff, I had to define what does produced mean, okay? Because Coke is produced in Missoula, Montana. Is that a farm to college product? I don't think so. So we had to define that, especially in terms of being able to quantify and be able to say this is what we're doing and measure success and whatnot. So here's how we define what produced means. It's an agricultural food product. It was a grown, processed, value-added, or manufactured, and originate in the program's defined geographic area, and contains local and or regional products when seasonally available, because you know, we buy some local salsa. Well, tomatoes and onions and that kind of produce is not available all year, so we needed to think a little broader with what that meant. Or they're a product unique to the region. An example of that would be Daly's Bacon. Not all those pigs come from Montana, but that's a unique product to this area that has a signature idea and has been a long-standing company, and so that fits our definition. Okay, a little history here. We had some collaboration, we've had some significant events, and then we'll talk about some of the accomplishments. In July of 2002, I went to our National Association conference and listened to a presentation by some folks from Bates College in Maine. And I'd had the idea to do this for a long time, but frankly didn't have the horsepower, and that's where the collaboration came in. Horsepower in terms of manpower. I do not have extra labor laying around at the University of Montana to start new initiatives and do all this kind of stuff. So it takes some people power to do it. But I went, listened to that, and then I really kind of got excited about and decided that we just had to we had to have this happen. So that's kind of when it all started. This year, I presented, that's why the nice spiffy shirt, I presented in New Orleans at our national conference this summer, and we have now, 3 years later, one of the let's say most highly regarded farm to college programs in the country. We're doing a lot of things, and it is in fact becoming a model for institutional use. If we go to the next one here, this is the original gang of 4 here, Chrissy and the 3 other students that started. That came from a conversation with Nita Hassanen from the Environmental Studies program, where we serve on the Recycling Oversight Committee on campus, and I just, you know, she asked me what I thought about local foods, and I said, geez, I would really like to do something in that arena, but I just don't have it. You know, less than a week later, I had 4 grad students, and away we were going. She assigned them a project, greening the campus. We met, we talked about what we might do, and then we decided on the event, the first inaugural event, which was Montana Mornings, and I think that's maybe the next slide. So basically what that was is they put together a program where we did a breakfast in the UC food court, and it was all Montana products. And it was very successful. We had over 200 people. The menu was entirely Montana products. In fact, we had to go to the Good Food Store and late in breakfast to get some stuff, but it was very successful. It also, and this is important, it also got quite a bit of media coverage. 3 television stations covered it, and there were a couple of newspapers that were there to do stories about it. That's an important component of this because, you know, the university does a lot of stupid things and we do a lot of good things. And we have relationships to maintain in the community that we live in. And the big thing is that the bad news people find out and they'll tell everybody. The good things that happen, not always the case. So it's important for us to tell folks what we're doing and get the word out, which is why I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you folks. But we also did a survey. The next one, make no mistake, I run a business. I run a $10 million business on campus, and you know, I'm not state funded. I get $0 from the state, and I'm responsible to generate my own revenue in excess of my expenses. I am for profit on campus. But we surveyed folks, and one of the things you'll see, 95% willing to pay more for those kinds of items. That's students. Probably the most cost-conscious group on campus is faculty. 91% willing to pay more. So we said, we might be onto something here. And that was in one of our cash operations. So we knew, and the 4 women who worked on the project, they did some advertising, but there were still 200 people that showed up for that event. So we knew that we were onto something that was going to be good. And of course, anytime, at least from my perspective anyway, anytime that that I think that we're onto something good, I like to get my big boss involved because I think it's important. It's also important that George Dennison supports this. He's a very strong supporter of this program. And you guys need to know that because he's part of the reason why we're going where we're going. And he took the time out of his schedule. So we started with Montana Mornings. Now we needed to move this thing from a project, which the ladies worked on, to a program. Big difference. And so we had to move from a special event, which Montana Mornings was, to mainstreaming these things. If it's going to work, it's not going to work for these businesses if we do once a month, we buy whatever products from the various purveyors, and then we don't do it again until the next month. So obviously we had to move this into mainstream onto our menus. So it also takes, like I said earlier, some horsepower. I don't have people laying around to do this. So then, well, not yet. That's just the Italian thing going here. But then what we did was, Chrissy and Shelley, another student, actually took on this project in their master's portfolio to help us get this thing basically moved from a program, or from a project to a program. And then it was in summer of 2003 when our marketing person, the dining services marketing person, developed the logo. Now you can go ahead. So we've been doing some special events, about one a month, for the 03-04 academic year. But each time we did these, and each time they were successful and they were well received, because we have a real broad constituent group. So as these events became more popular and more supported, it told us, again, just supported that we need to keep moving in that direction. So after the first year, go ahead, Chrissy, and we did this event, Cultivating Partnerships. Now this was a first real strategic, let's get this thing off the ground and really get some momentum behind it. It was our 1-year anniversary. We wanted to celebrate, educate, and connect folks and start bringing people together. This was a great event on a lot of levels, and I'll kind of go through the details a little bit. But at this point, we had spent about $215,000 on local and regional foods, which was about 7.2% of our food budget. So this is the end of the first year. So there were 4 main components to this, or the agenda here was, we had a vendor seminar, so that was designed to bring all the folks who were buying product from in to talk about the challenges and talk about how to actually do business with us, because we are a bureaucratic entity and there is some things that you have to do. Then we had a panel discussion, and we had a catered lunch, we had a vendor fair, and I'll kind of go through all of those as we go. Go ahead there, Chrissy. Vendor seminar. Okay, that was designed specifically to give information to the folks who produce the product. And the panel, the group that we had here was our executive chef on the left, Fraser McClay, who's the economist who's actually working with Grow Montana now. The next guy over, I am blanking on who that is.
Health inspector.
What? Well, I think that was the guy from the Montana Department of Health and Human Services. Then my business manager, Lita Brown. And the whole purpose of this was to facilitate figuring out for them how to do business with us, but not just how to do business, but how to do this business as fast as we could get it to happen. So that, these are folks who aren't used to having to sign papers and do all kinds of stuff to be able to do business, but we have to require that so that we can even pay them. So there are those hurdles that we had to work through. So that was what the vendor seminar was all about. The panel discussion was that this was a packed room. It was a very good event. And this again was a number of folks here. We had Neil Turnbull, who's from Montola, up in Culbertson, Montana. Dean Folkford, Wheat, Montana. Will Tusick, Montana Natural Beef. Jane Kyle, who's the Community Food Project Coordinator for the Mission Mountain Market up in Ronan, which is a great facility. We had my registered dietitian. We had Leroy Coles, who's from Cisco. We have a prime vendor contract with Cisco, Montana, and he was there. Neva was there from EVST, Environmental Studies. We also had 6 state legislators there. There was a good mix of Republicans and Democrats there. I have the names if you want that later, but for your voting pleasure. Anyway, so that was a great event. The purpose of that was to talk about again, communicate, connect people, get some synergy going, get it out there and talk about it. The next thing that we did, go ahead Chrissy, was we did a catered lunch. This was again strategically designed so that we put the panelists sat with the group, the legislators sat, we had the tables kind of assigned for folks that were there. So we had a mix at a table of the panelists, legislators, media people, my food service personnel, my culinary faculty, the folks who cook the food, who are responsible for ordering and preparing the food, state regulatory officials, and then we had some of the folks that we buy product from. And then we also had folks from some of the other Montana universities that we invited to also sit and talk about, again, to get some dialogue going. It was a very good event. It raised a lot of awareness and really started some synergy going. Then the next part of the day was the vendor seminar. We had 20 vendors that showed up, and there was a product sampling and an opportunity for networking. We had attempted to get local restaurateurs to come, but we had very few, if any, really show up. I think there were some, but not very many showed up. That was not successful, that part. The other thing that wasn't successful about that was that we didn't allow these vendors to sell. If we do this again, and it's likely that we will at some point, we're going to change a few things about that. Including now I have a database of some 260 some restaurateurs that I can send a mailing to, so we can do things a little bit differently. It was successful. Go ahead with that next slide. On one level, these two folks here, one produces greens and the other makes salsa, and so there was some conversation between them about buying from each other, and so that was kind of an interesting development, and I think they're now doing business. But overall, the event was really good. It got, again, good media coverage, and there was radio coverage on that one, and then there was also a couple of articles and TV reports. So, where are we here? Then I want to add a little bit. These are folks that we do regular business with now, okay? It's not the whole list, but I just want to talk about a couple of them here. Montola, we do about $18,000 worth of safflower oil business with them. Wheat, Montana, we have a contract that's worth about $60,000 over 3 years with them. Bausch potatoes, we're using almost all of our potatoes now are from Bausch. Pasta Montana, the Daly's Bacon. We used to sell 13 different bacons. We're down to, I think, 4 bacons now, and I think they're all from Daly's. Montana Natural Beef. That's Will up in Ronan. So, to date, like Chrissy said, we've purchased about $640,000 now over the 2 years, and that last year was 13.7% of our total budget. So we're talking about a lot of money potential here. And we'll see what that, go to the next one, we'll see what that kind of looks like. This is one of my favorite slides because this packs a lot of weight when we share this with parents. You know, I'm the director of dining on campus, but I'm also involved in recruiting and retaining students in the business of the University of Montana. And when parents see this, and they know that this is where we're buying food from, you know, this has significant economic impact, and this particular one is just the Montana companies. So we use this a lot in terms of marketing. Okay, so let's kind of move into the next section here, Harvesting a Sustainable Future. This is why this is good for Montana, and why this is good for you folks to be interested in, and why it's good for our region. In some circles, this is like, wow, this is cutting edge stuff. In reality, it's really pretty traditional. I mean, that's the way we used to feed ourselves in this country. There's about 200 colleges, schools, farm to school, farm to college programs out there. Recently, the New York Times just did an article. I don't know if any of you happen to see that or not, but the University of Montana's Farm to College program, I was interviewed, and they did quote me, and they also did use some of our information that we sent. So it's a pretty big deal when the New York Times wants to contact folks and talk about that. And being one who believes really strongly in always putting the University of Montana in the most positive light possible and never missing an opportunity for positive public relations, I was real excited to talk with that reporter about that. And I talked about some other stuff connected to this, because I think there's a lot more to the story than just what she was after, and maybe she'll follow up on that, who knows. But what's interesting is all the farm to college programs are different. I mean, all over the country there's different growing seasons. There's some colleges that can buy local stuff, 12 months. We can't do that. So it's critical for us here that we strike when the iron is hot. When tomatoes are in season, I expect that my chefs and buyers will buy tomatoes from the day that we can get them until the day we can't get them, because there's only so many weeks that we can do it. And that's when a little bit later, we'll get into kind of talking about that in terms of the challenges that come along with that kind of an edict, if you will, for me. And Chrissy mentioned earlier that in the 50s, 70% of the food that the Montanans ate was grown locally, now less than 20%. So that needs to be changed. So part of what this is talking about revitalizing the agricultural history of Montana. Food security, national security. I mean, this has been out there. We're finding, and part of what my job is to anticipate, if not create, those trends that our students want. And one of the things that our students want to know now is, where is their food coming from? Especially in light of things like the mad cow incidents now too that there have been. Folks want to know. And one of the shockers to me was, I tried pretty darn hard to find out. When I found out that in the first mad cow scare that the diseased meat was sent to Montana, and I wanted to know where, because I'm the consumer. I could not find it. I was told that the government, and I don't know which part of the government, but I was told they'll never tell you. You can't find out. All they would say, the only information that I could get, the sum total of the information about meat that came to Montana that I possibly could have eaten, although I didn't eat it, I know that, but some of you might have. It came to Montana and went into a retail outlet. That's it. That's all the sum total of the information that I could get. So I think there's just cause to have a heightened awareness about where your food is coming from. So, and as a result of that, not yet there. That's just me flapping around. So. Okay, so then there's all these other things down here. GMOs, irradiated foods, E. coli. I mean, there's food and the diseases and the challenges that come with the production of food is all in the forefront of folks' minds. Most recently, the article that came out, and I don't know the individual's name, who wrote a bioterrorism article about what would happen if you put some, I think it was botulism in milk. I mean, that was an academic paper that they had the individual pull, took the paper, they took it out of print because there was the concern that Jesus could happen, and it can happen. So that's something, it's botulism, yeah. So anyway, our consumers want to know. I think it's a fair question, and I think we have the responsibility to respond to their concerns. Now we can go ahead there. So the environmental benefits that come along with this: reduces pollution, preserves open space, it's a sustainable industry. Chrissy mentioned that typically the food that we get in Montana travels over 1,500 miles. You add to that now what's going to happen with fuel surcharges and all those kinds of things, and we're going to be paying more for food in the very short future here, in the close future.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I want to touch on is sustainable. You know, a lot of the industries in Montana, oil, lumber, mining, that's extractive. This is something that has the potential to be sustainable. It's something that I think we need to be looking at, because those resources will, at some point, be depleted, and they will not be able to support the families and the economy of the state. Then there's the quality, okay? I wanted this slide put together because this was just before we could get the whole lot of local tomatoes, but the top row of tomatoes came locally, the bottom row came, and this isn't staged, this is go get me 5 tomatoes, or whatever it was, and this is what we got, okay? The bottom row of tomatoes came from my prime vendor. They came from Cisco, Montana, out of Billings, and the top row came from a local source. Big thing there, the nutrition. There is research out there now. Professor Robert Schufelt at the University of Georgia is doing some work on the nutritious aspect of local and fresh foods, and there is a connection. If you pick that tomato at that point in ripeness, you're also picking it and eating it when it's the most nutritious for you. So food that doesn't have to travel 1,500 miles or be bred so that it could be hard like bowling balls and, you know, that color, and then you take your chances if it ripens in your establishment, you know, also has a nutritional aspect to that. And if you eat with your eyes, it's obvious. That's the other part about nutrition, especially with kids. They do eat with their eyes. So if it looks good, they're more likely to put it in their mouths. And you're all aware of the obesity issues that we also are going to be challenged to address in this country, which then result in health issues, and it goes on and on. Okay. Economic stimulus. Keeps money in the local economy, which is a good thing. It supports families, farms, and ranches, creates jobs, expands the tax base. And you don't need to be an economist to know that that's a formula for some good things to happen, and all the other kind of synergistic things that happen when these things happen in terms of quality of life. You know, again, Chrissy mentioned that food processing in the 30s, 40s, and 50s in Montana, that was the #1 employer. Now those jobs aren't here, they're exported, so this is the potential to move them back in. It's important to us because she mentioned value added. Value added is a big component to us. Cost of labor right now is so, even, you know, this is almost hard to say in Montana being dead last in per capita wages, but of the 50 states, and probably a few third world countries maybe, but I'm not sure. But anyway, in the 50 states, still for us the cost of labor is one of the #1 expenses. So when we buy product, we buy a lot of value-added product. I don't buy, you know, when I started in the restaurant business, we used to buy a 50-pound bag of carrots, and anything that happened to those carrots, people did. Either I did it or somebody else in the kitchen. Now, I buy sliced, diced, coins, sticks. I don't, you know, I have some folks in another few years won't know what a real carrot looks like because they're going to be used to seeing the stuff in all the value-added forms. Okay. And so it's a very good economic stimulus. For us, go ahead there, it's a sound business decision. I mean, make no mistake, the great marketing and public relations, I mean, that's tied into this. This is good on a lot of levels. But it's also cost effective and it also offers price stability. And it's a good way for us to distinguish ourselves from other institutions in the state, although the goal is that all the other institutions in the state start doing this and get on board with this because it's, in my opinion, the right thing to be doing. It's provided a lot of media opportunities for us to date. We've had about 5 TV reports, 4 radio, 7 newspaper. We were in the Montana and Alumni magazine twice with stories about this, and we've done 3 or 4 different public presentations on the topic. It's important to get that word out. Cost effective. Right now, we're faced with what a lot of the local restaurateurs are going to be faced with, and that's these fuel surcharges. Every cost that can be passed along is going to be passed along. The closer you're buying food to the source, the more economic it's going to be to buy. And the other one that I'll point out to you is that when we had the first mad cow scare, beef prices shot up like a rocket. And in fact, in one case, as it turns out in hindsight, I was sort of duped by our prime vendor into buying a significant purchase of whole strip loins. So you know we're talking about a lot of money. That's expensive cut of meat. And I bought 200 plus of them for an event that we had. Because the price was going so high so fast. But all the other beef that I was buying from Will up in Montana, that price stayed flat. That price did not go up. So I just kept buying there and didn't have to buy the beef from our prime vendor at a higher price. So that offered a level of price stability. Okay, so still on sound business decision. Go ahead, Chrissy. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's it. Okay, this one here. I don't know if this is going to make a whole lot of sense to you guys, but here's some of the numbers. It made a whole lot of sense to the people that I presented to, the college directors down in New Orleans. Here's our last 4 fiscal years. You can see our enrollment has been going up. You can see our meal plans. That's the number of meal plans. Now there's a couple of blips in there, but that's because of some internal stuff that's happened. In fiscal year 03 here, I took on university concessions, the stadium and Washington Grizzly Stadium and the Adams Center. In 05 here, we opened up Lewis and Clark, the South Campus housing down on Higgins opened up. But the big things you want to look at: enrollment, food purchases, and the food cost. The first 2 full years of Farm to College, 34.4 and 34.4, which is both lower than. The number one complaint from my chefs and production managers and the people who are responsible for managing food costs: this is going to cost us too much. And that was the number one response. That's the number one response and concern from Montana State University when Grow Montana was suggesting that they consider doing a program. These numbers don't lie, for one thing, and this particular set of numbers don't lie, because I put the numbers together. And there you see our purchases, the Farm to College purchases, the total percents, and then what was happening with food CPI. So we think that while enrollment was increasing, our participation in meal plans, what we were spending in food, we kept a nice flat food cost, and those are good numbers in anyone's book. Go ahead. So what are we going to do? Where are we going? want to talk a little bit about changing the purchasing paradigm and then mainstreaming menu items, what the other campuses of the university are doing, and then some entrepreneurial opportunities. And then our goal for this year, fiscal year '06, is to hit the $1 million mark in local and regional. The purchasing paradigm. I have a cost plus vendor. It's very easy for my food buyers to hit one button and automatically order food from one place and have it delivered in one truck and be done with it. We have 34 different vendors that we're dealing with in Farm to College. It's no longer easy to just purchase food in the way that we used to. So the challenge is to get them to accept. It's more work for them to get them to do it. That is no small task. And the support really has to be at every level of management to get them to do that. Because what I find, even today, even as of lunch today, some of the items that I think and thought we were buying that were Farm to College items, I didn't see out where I ate lunch today. So now I have to go and start that whole process of why didn't we have X, Y, Z today. It's a challenge. The other thing is, and this is what Grow Montana is going to find out, the challenge is also exponential. I spend over $3 million in food a year. At Western, they spend about $461,000, and at Montana Tech, and I also manage the food service at Montana Tech, so I live both sides of this challenge. We spend there about $437,000 on food. And I can tell you that they do not have the latitude with their food cost to do, they really have to be very cost conscious. So they're not in a position, it's an economies of scale. They're not in the same position that we are to be able to spend 13-14% of our overall budget, food budget, on local and regional foods. Now, some of that stuff is more expensive. I mean, I pay a hell of a lot more for that safflower oil, almost twice as much. But safflower oil is the most healthful oil that you can deep fat fry in. And a lot of my students eat deep fat fried foods. It's the best salad oil, most healthful salad oil for you to use in dressings. It's also the #1 oil in terms of its recycle use for biodiesel fuel. So all of those reasons combined said it made sense to buy a more expensive oil. Other things that we buy, Bausch potatoes, for example, they're cheaper than what we were buying. So you save in some areas, it costs you more in other areas. Some of the entrepreneurial opportunities involve the Growers Co-op up in Western Montana Growers Co-op up in Ronan. Recently, Opportunity Resources was donated a working ranch. And one of the things that I think is potential out there is they grow a lot of vegetables, and Opportunity Resources are experts at packaging. So if those two can get together and somehow cut carrots and package carrots, we'll be happy to buy all the carrots. So there's a lot of potential out there for that. That's something that you guys on this council can become involved in and see if there's not ways to make that happen. We buy a lot of value-added products, a lot of value-added products. I don't buy a 40-pound block of cheese. I'll buy 40 pounds of shredded cheese ready to go because I just don't have the labor to process it. The next one talks a little bit about this is a political agenda. This is a political item. Go ahead. This is from the 2004 Democratic Party, one of their plank resolutions. You may have seen that, but that's something that I think is going to be played out again in the next elections. I know not yet. I know Grow Montana is interested in that. But in terms of what I want to, as now not as the Director of Dining Services, as a citizen of the state of Montana, what I want to see and hope can happen through this program is that when someone's running for political office and they go up into some ranch in wherever, in Culbertson, and talk to somebody, that they get a farmer or a rancher out there that says, and what is your view of education in this state? And what is your position in terms of supporting education in the state of Montana? Because I want the connection to be there that education, University of Montana, the university system is a consumer of state funds on one hand, but it's one hell of a business partner to this state on another hand. And I want that connection to be made there so that they know that, or I want them to see this logo, wherever this logo, on a business in Culbertson that says the Farm to College. I want Dean Folkrad in Three Forks to have this. So there's that connection between, yes, the university system is a consumer of state dollars, but it also is a very big business partner for the people of Montana. And that's just something that I think is important. Okay, almost done. Okay, how do you get this to happen other places? Well, you got to build support and buy-in. You got to set some goals. It's about relationships. You have to educate and celebrate the progress and keep doing that over and over again. Go ahead. And that support, you got to start at the top. You got to convince the key decision makers and the culinary staff who's going to do it. You got to make sure they see the big picture, that you buy into it, that you have safety nets. In other words, when I hear from my folks, I tried to order the lettuce, I tried to buy the lettuce, I tried to buy the lettuce, they didn't have it, they were out, they're out. We still have 13,000 people to feed every day. We need lettuce. So we have to have a safety net there for these guys to get it. But we also have to have relationships that really do work. Set goals, be specific, measurable, create a plan. I got 10 different operations that I'm running on campus. I have different goals for each of them, different products that they're using. There's a goal, if you will, for the institution, and then there's a goal for operations. So the other thing is that I had to change my organizational structure to facilitate that. Once I ran out of students, they all graduated and they were gone, I had to figure out how am I going to do this on an ongoing basis. So fortunately, due to some technological changes, I was able to free up a half-time FTE and had a position in my purchasing because that's where the technology helped. And I was able to, now I have a position that's half-time doing my accounts payable, making sure that all these guys get paid, and half-time on the relationship side of Farm to College. So, but that's what you have to be also willing to do, is change your organization to make that happen, so that it itself can be sustainable. Go ahead there. We had to build support and buy-in with the local producers because they were skeptical. First of all, we ran into a lot of people who didn't even know that they could sell to the university. I mean, didn't even know that that was a possibility, let alone how enormous the opportunity was. So it's about, like I said, building relationships. We met with them, they met with us. We check in regularly. Go ahead to the next one. We went to the Mission Mountain Market, we met with them there, toured that facility, which I think is a gem of the state up there, what can be done up there. And then, go ahead, they came to us, and we showed them around, showed them what we were doing, what we were all about. And then the next thing is you really do need to communicate, do promotional events, involve the students. In our case, that's who our constituents are. Get them involved and get the word out. So, which kind of brings us to the end here about what you guys can do and what we can do collaboratively. First, I think you need to be proactive. Change really does start with one person at a time. When you go to a restaurant, you have to be willing to say what on your menu is local. And then order those items and support the local folks. What that will do is that will help to educate the local restaurateurs that having local foods on their menus is important and that the consumer will buy it. then that'll help, that'll help get more people putting those items on. And then the other thing that I'll leave you with is that, I knew I wanted to do this, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel to a number of ranches and a number of farms and meet a number of incredibly hardworking people. And I would say that today, now, 2.5 years, 3 years later, whatever it is from when we started this, I really am more committed now than ever to try to expand in any way that we can, whether that's from what we do at the University of Montana, Missoula campus, to however we can do this to help Grow Montana get this so that it can happen in all the institutions, because she told you the number that they purchased. We purchased 3 million, I think 12 million was the number that just the institutions purchased. So it is about a lot of money. It is about big bucks. And I think that we need to be doing it. I believe very strongly that it's the right thing to be doing. It's a good thing to do. So, questions that you might have? I think we ran a little late, but sorry.
I'd like to ask one question.
Yeah.
What do you see as the biggest challenge for the entrepreneurial opportunities and the value added, within the value added? What do you see as the biggest challenge? I'm sure there's many, but
The first thing is just communicating what value added means and why that's important. And here's a good example. We, in a conversation during one of those meetings that I said they came to us, we went to them. Well, when they came to us, we talked about not having a purveyor of hamburger patties. So Will Tusick said, there's an opportunity. We talk about entrepreneurial, and we buy a lot, $40,000 worth, I think, of a year of hamburger patties. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's a pretty good number. He went to Imperial Meats and said, I've got beef, you've got a way to make patties, let's get together. Now we're buying our hamburger patties from Will through Imperial Meats. But that was a big chunk of change. It was just sitting there waiting for somebody to come up with an idea. So making sure that we communicate what the need is, because we have the capability to tell folks we use, 8,000 pounds of carrot sticks. We use 3,000 pounds of this. I mean, we can tell you what we use in a year, and we can tell you what month we're going to use it in. So, I mean, just getting the word out.
so the information. And is there, because the reason I asked that was because I was thinking about the mobile slaughter units, and something of that kind of scale is necessary to get that going. Is there other opportunities that are a lot smaller than that don't? Well, I guess what I'm asking is, how much is like legislative issues? And how much is just getting it? So the biggest challenge, you said, is probably getting the information out
Of what we need, and then matching what we need with somebody that can produce it, a way that they can produce it.
I, of course, think that policies are really important, and that policies are what has created the infrastructure that we have now that enables us to, ship wheat to Japan, like that. And it's the same type of policies and economic development work that needs to happen to recreate a local food infrastructure, such as facilities to process food in. Because there's not a whole lot. There's Mission Mountain Market, which is a great model of a community kitchen where people can go and process their food, and they don't have to own the facilities themselves. They can just use it, and they have to pay a fee, of course, but it's a good opportunity to create value-added products. But we need more of those throughout the state, and I think to make that happen will take policy change.
That's actually what I was getting at, is that it's a systemic issue of economies of scale, but economies of scale don't have, and sometimes
Right.
half a mind to it. It doesn't make any sense really to do a lot of the things that are done, but that's just legislative issues.
In your brightest hopes, how much can you foresee local food being percentage of the product of your?
Yeah, that's a moving target number for us. I haven't been able to put a finger on exactly how much I think we can buy. I would love it if we could hit 20%. I'm thrilled that we're at 13.7. I believe that number is going to go up this year because that 13.7 number didn't include all of our potatoes. Well, we buy a lot of potatoes, a lot of French fries, all kinds of potatoes. I don't know, that's one of the things that we're actually gonna, I hope we can get from Grow Montana in their grants that they have to help. That's a moving target number, I don't know. I'd love it to be as high as it could be, but I'm not sure how we're gonna be able to get there. One other thing that needs to happen is there needs to be more co-ops, because the most difficult thing for the people on my staff who buy food is making that telephone call. We can call Western Montana Growers Co-op, and they can tell us what produce they have available. They take care of getting it from their sources, and we get it from one source. That's one call. If we had to call another 25 growers of produce, then we can't do that. We wouldn't be able to do that. The same thing has to happen with beef. Of course, then on a bigger issue, Montana needs to get a beef plant in Montana. But that's another political issue there. I mean, we have people now, there's a co-op, Steve Christensen, what's the name of that co-op out of Helena? They're a co-op. They send their beef to Kansas, have it slaughtered and bring it back. Now,
Oh, branded beef?
yeah, Montana branded beef, that's it, yes. I mean, that's crazy, but that's what they have to do. So,
You know, it seems like the increase in cost of transportation and the thing that happened with New Orleans, like now we can't put our wheat on a barge down to New
Right.
Orleans, that actually is working in our favor, because there will be surcharges on that food that comes in from long distance, but there won't be a surcharge on the local food, and then the local producer can actually raise their price a little bit and actually stay in business. I mean, it could help the whole situation for us to actually pay what transportation costs, which we haven't been doing for a long time.
What's your feel?
See, what did you mean by Montana not having a processing plant for beef?
there's not a major slaughter facility in Montana. I mean, there's a mobile.
Well, there are major slaughter. There's 2 USDA certified slaughter facilities in Montana, but Montana is a big state, so for a lot of people, it's just as easy to ship it to Nebraska as it is to get to the USDA inspected slaughter unit in Montana. So we need more of them, and I don't know what the capacity is for the 2 that we have. I don't know if they can handle all of the beef that's grown in Montana. They're not that big, so we need more.
I should have said, there's a lot of
Greater
places where you can
capacity.
slaughter beef and have it inspected, but I'm talking about a big facility. Like,
What's your feeling on the organic?
yeah, you know, when the 4 students started with us, they were advocates of this being organic also, and I'm not. I think organic is great, but I don't think that when it comes to local, regional sustainability, there's components of it, and some of what we buy is organic, but we don't source organic and probably won't. This is about regional. I mean, I don't want someone that's dumping chemicals all over their product. I mean, we would be sensitive to that if we were aware of that, but at the same time, we're not in a position to mandate or dictate what kind of growing practices that a given farmer or rancher uses. We like the Montana natural beef, and we can source that. In fact, the only way that we are even in a contract with Wheat Montana was in fact by RFPing for a product that didn't have additives. That's the only way, because in the RFP process, Wheat Montana would have never stood a chance. I mean, Eddie's and Snyder's sell bread for, much less. So the value of that contract is different, and that's the only way. I mean, we had to source the product based on its nutritional value and lack of additives.
Well, talking about the economies of scale, for something like the safflower or oil, if there were more state institutions buying that,
Mhm.
would the cost maybe come down if there was more guaranteed market for
Yeah.
everybody in Montana that has some sort of a state tie-in or contract or something, or
Right.
buying it? Would that
That's-
help?
Yes, and that's a great question, example, because what if all the restaurants, what if there was a biodiesel plant here, and they used to be, now I don't know if it's still, I'm not even sure, but we used to give our fuel, our used fryer oil to the guys in town that were making the biodiesel fuel, and then that was fueling the bus that runs between the parking lots on campus and does a loop. But if there was a collaborative of restaurateurs in town who would use safflower oil and donate that oil for biodiesel fuel, the price would come down for all of us and everybody would be healthier because it's the most healthy oil that you can fry in, you can cook it. Olive oil aside, but I'm just talking about.
Frying.
You don't fry it.
You don't-
That's right. You don't deep fat fry in olive oil, that's right. So, I mean, in a big picture, that'd be great if that could happen. That'd be awesome.
So with regards to the biodiesel, that was a prototype plant. It was a miniature
Right.
of anything that would ever be a commercial sized plant. The company has been trying to work for several years to put in a full-scale plant, but it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
It's about to.
It's about to.
Yeah, because someone, I heard something about that, but when they get there, we'll be happy to give them the oil.
Yeah, they're getting closer,
Used
they're
oil.
just
Yeah.
not there yet.
Yeah. But I think that'd be a great place to start, because I think the price would. If the Cisco trucks that come in and deliver to us are delivering oil to all these other guys here, the price is gonna come down. Because then the guys in Culberson are gonna say, grow more of this seed so that we can have more of this oil, and it's just gonna be more available, and that
I
would
mean, that's the
work.
whole point of the institutional buying law, is to increase and stabilize the market for the growers, and they will grow the market.
Mhm.
Any other questions?
What's been the response of your big suppliers like Cisco?
That's a really good one. And I'm sitting on a big, I mean, I have to buy something like 90% of my product from them. And I'm just getting ready now, right now, by the end of December, I'll have a new prime vendor contract in place. That contract will not include some of the items in the market basket that are items that we choose to purchase through Farm to College. So they haven't raised any stink about it yet. The Wheat Montana goes through Cisco. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing, because that keeps the total value of that contract up where it needs to be. So, but I'm not sure where it's going to go this next go-around. I'm going to find out in a few months. That's a tough one. That's a difficult dance. I mean, they do have the ability to say, you're supposed to buy that from us. They haven't yet. But of course, I went to them 3 years ago. I went to them before we even started down. As soon as I thought this was something I wanted to do, I went and told those guys, I said, you better be sourcing Montana products, because we're going to be rolling out a program at some point, and we're going to be trying to buy more Montana products. And so I gave them good, fair warning that I was going to do it, didn't keep it from them. But they've been good. And when they get a product that's sourced, they let us know, and we can start buying.
Any other questions? All right. I'd like to thank Chrissy and Mark for coming to join us tonight. And if everybody would join me in a round of applause. One last thing before we quit tonight, I wanted to remind you that our next meeting will be November 10th. It will again be here at MCAT. The social hours at 5:30, social half hour starts at 5:30. Presentation will start at 6. The topic for that meeting will be green building practices. We hope to see you all there. Thanks.
Thanks.
Cut that. There is tons of food back there. We
Some beer,
thought all
too.
these chairs would be full.